That was beautiful, without any planning or anything on that. That came off really well. Thank you. Well, good morning. I'm Reverend J. Wolin, the settled minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota. I'm so glad to be with all of you this morning. We especially want to welcome our visitors, both here in person as well as online on YouTube. And we invite you to sign up and register so we can get to know you better. You'll get a weekly email from us if you sign up, either on our website or right outside the door at the welcome table. So after the service, there will be always coffee. That seems to be a ritual among Unitarian Universalists, as well as some sort of dessert of some sort. I always root for chocolate chip cookies personally, but I'm not putting my finger on that scale. And I believe we have an announcement, a video announcement today.
For the past 2 years, our church has sponsored a panel on embracing our differences as a way to show our commitment to racial justice. This year's panel was inspired by Nobel Prize-winning author Toni Morrison's book, The Bluest Eyes. This powerful, banned book has profoundly influenced the lives of Viola Davis and Oprah Winfrey and readers around the globe. Share your talents with your fellow UUs in our social justice programs, and remember to increase your pledge. With you, we can do more.
Thank you, Jody. Jody's been really been the champion of our Embracing Our Indifferences program the last couple of years. Another announcement, if you have ever thought about singing in the choir, I want to let you know this is your chance to just try it out. For Easter, we're going to have a special one-time choir that we want to invite all members of any skill level to sing. I believe they're singing this piece from this guy called Mozart and Vivaldi, I think. But starting March 16th, there will be practices, and you're not committed to singing in the choir any other time other than Easter if you do this. If you want to, you're always welcome to at any time the choir, as long as you come to practice. So please see Don afterwards if you want more details on that. Also, to let you know that starting March 26th, which will be our annual meeting, we will be going back to one service. And before then, we will let you know the time, so keep your eye out for that. And okay, that being said, I think we've gotten through the announcements. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Fred Sarasky, one of our very own, to share his musical gifts with us. opening reading today is from the Reverend Amy Lloyd called Intentions and Trust. Today I want to greet joy without a trace of suspicion. I want to open my eyes to the light without a blink of dread. I want to look at my past without a whisper of shame. I want to look at my future without a hint of fear. Today, I want to dance without pausing to think. I want to belly laugh without caring who hears. I want to open my arms and twirl in the sun until I fall breathless, free to be myself, full of joy that I open to allow completely letting go, without even a smudge, not even a smudge of suspicion or a wink of hesitation. That's my intention. That's what I want. And now I invite you to join me in saying the words of affirmation, which are printed in your order of service and displayed behind me on the screen. As we light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we affirm our third principle, acceptance of one another and the encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations.
Good morning. Today's story is The Three Questions, and it's based on a story by Leo Tolstoy, written and illustrated by John Muth. There once was a boy named Nikolai who sometimes felt uncertain about the way to act. I want to be a good person, he told his friends, but I don't always know the best way to do that. If only I could find the answers to my three questions, Nikolai continued, then I also would know what to do. So, when is the best time to do things? Well, Sonia the heron spoke up first. To know the best time to do things, one must plan in advance, she said. Then Gogol the monkey replied, you will know when to do things if you watch and pay close attention. And Pushkin the dog said, you can't pay attention to everything yourself. You need a pack of dogs to help keep watch and help you decide when to do things. So Nikolai thought for a moment, and then he asked his second question. Well, who is the most important one? Well, of course, those who are closest to heaven, said Sonia, circling in the sky. Those who know how to heal the sick, said Gogol the monkey. Those who make the rules, growled Pushkin. Well, Nikolai thought some more, and then he asked his third question. What is the right thing to do? Flying, said Sonia. Having fun all the time, laughed Gogol. Fighting, barked Pushkin right away. The boy thought for a while. He loved his friends, and he knew that they were trying to help him, but their answers did not seem quite right. I know, he thought. I will ask old Leo the turtle. Surely he will know the answers that I'm looking for. So Nikolai hiked up the mountains where the old turtle lived all alone, and when he arrived, he found Leo digging a garden. I have 3 questions, and I have come to ask for your help, Nikolai said. When is the best time to do things? And who is the most important one? And what is the right thing to do? Well, the turtle listened carefully, but he only smiled. Nikolai saw Leo struggling and asked if he could help. The turtle gave him his shovel and thanked him. And just as Nikolai finished digging, the wind blew wildly and a rain burst from the dark clouds. The boy and the turtle were hurrying towards Leo's cottage when Nikolai heard a cry for help. Running down the path, he found a panda who had been knocked out by a falling tree branch. Carefully, Nikolai carried her into Leo's house and tucked her into bed to get warm. The storm raged on outside, but when the panda finally woke up, she said, "Where am I, and where is my child?" So the boy ran out of the cottage and down the path. The roar of the storm was deafening with howling winds and drenching rain, but he ran farther into the forest until he found the panda's child, cold and shivering on the ground. The little panda was wet and scared but alive, so the boy carried her back to Leo's home and put her in her mother's arms. Leo the turtle smiled when he saw what the boy had done. So the next morning, the storm had passed, the sun was warm, the birds were singing, and all was well with the world. And at that moment, Sonya, Gogol, and Pushkin arrived to make sure everyone was all right. The boy felt great peace within himself. He had wonderful friends. He had saved the panda and her child, but he also felt disappointed. He still did not have the answers to his 3 questions. But the old turtle looked at the boy and said, "But your questions have been answered." "They have?" asked the boy. "Well, yesterday you stayed to help me dig my garden, and if you didn't, you wouldn't have heard the panda's cries. So therefore, the most important time was for you to spend digging in my garden, and the most important one at that moment was me. And the most important thing to do was to help me. And later, when you found the panda, the most important time was the time you took to make her feel comfortable and to save her child. The most important ones were the panda and her baby. And the most important thing to do was to take care of them and make them safe. So remember, there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one who you are with. And the most important thing to do is to do good for the ones who are standing at your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in this world, and this is why we are here." The end. So this story speaks to me about one of my spiritual practices, and that is to remember to be present in the moment, to be with those who are with me, and to care and support those who I am with. For when I remember to share these gifts with others, I find those gifts are shared back to me, and they fill me with joy and love. So now I invite any younger UUs who might be here to join me in the West Wing, where we will share with each other the things that we love. Thank you.
Our centering inwards today is a poem by Wendell Berry entitled "The Peace of Wild Things." When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. Now let us take a moment of silence, and I invite you during this time of rest to rest in the grace of this place and be free. So as we spoke of earlier, the third principle of Unitarian Universalism is acceptance of one another and the encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Now, I've always found the juxtaposition of these two statements so interesting. We accept you for just as you are, and now we want you to change. And it's true, every moment that we exist on this earth, we are changing. And with every new experience that we have, we change and we learn something. But in this case, I am speaking about intentional change. Now, being intentional about looking deep into the well of our soul to search and constantly think about what our purpose in life is now. What does it mean to live as our best selves? What does it mean to reach the full potential of our humanity? What does it mean to be in relation to others? What does it mean to create wholeness in your life and with the world? These are questions that we need to work throughout our lives. And if we look at our lives as journeys, I think it affects how we look at that third principle. It is not just an acceptance for others for who they are, but also an acceptance for others where they are on their religious and spiritual journey. And this is particularly true for Unitarian Universalism, which asks us to search for truth, which asks us to question, which does not rely on ancient words, but rather asks us to incorporate our experiences and the teachings we learn from the world in order to make meaning. We tend to create a congregation of people here who are not only on different parts of the path, but are on completely different paths. And so we each have our own path to follow in our own way and in our own time. We are on the same, but we are also on an interdependent path with everybody else, right? This is the paradox that can make our pluralistic religion and community challenging, right? We're on our own path, but we are also on paths with others. So let us remember to hold each other and each other's hearts in our heart. Because how can we be whole if the people we are in relationship with are not yet whole? So let us be open to the notion that maybe, just maybe, we don't have all the answers. And as our principles state, I encourage you to grow spiritually and open yourselves to new understandings of the universe and your lives. As the old saying goes, it is not the destination, it is the journey that is important. And so I want you to know, when I use the word spirituality, I know that brings up many different things for different people. I do not necessarily equate spirituality with supernaturalism. Unitarians in the 19th century would equate spirituality with the phrase self-culture. And William Ellery Channing, one of the founders of Unitarianism in America, one of the leading 19th century Unitarian ministers and theologians, defined the phrase self-culture as, and I quote, care which every person owes to themselves, to the unfolding and perfecting of their nature, end quote. So the spiritual theology of self-culture is about human beings' ability to improve themselves as humans. And this improvement was not to be thought of in material terms. They were very clear about that, but could be accomplished through interior means of improving one's character. Now, spirituality to me is first connecting with our inner self, but then it is connecting that inner self with something greater than ourselves or outside of ourselves. It happens first when we make that connection with that burning flame that we have within, the thing that gives meaning to our life. And then we bring that flame, that life force, whatever you like to call it, your soul power, whatever, to the world outside yourself. Where we can connect it with others and with the world. And even though it's true, I was not a Boy Scout, both literally and figuratively. I only lasted 3 days in the Boy Scouts. I could never tie knots. It was terrible. That's why I wear loafers most days. But I know that if I want a campfire, right, and if I want a campfire to burn long and burn strong, I need to tend to that fire ongoing. I can't just leave it, get it up and go, because then it'll eventually burn out, right? You must constantly tend to the fire. And so too with the fire within ourselves, right? Our inner fire needs to be tended to, or it will go out. And so that's why I feel we need spiritual growth, this meaning making, this connecting to our inner self, this unfolding of our nature as a way to keep that fire lit and burning. Now, often when people think of spiritual growth, they think of a monk sitting alone on top of a mountain. right? Serene, peaceful, at one with the universe. Well, think of this image. I'm reminded of the spiritual seeker in the movie The Razor's Edge, which is based on a book by Somerset Maugham. And so he was this seeker was alone on top of a mountain, and he starts burning the pages of the book that he's reading in order to create heat for himself. And he says, it's easy to be a holy man sitting alone on top of a mountain. And I like to pair that quote with one by the rock star Bruce Springsteen, the theology of Bruce Springsteen, who wrote, it's hard to be a saint in the city. And both statements are true, right? Secluded and alone on a mountain without distractions, it is easier to quiet ourselves and our inner mind and to look inward, reflect, relax, renew ourselves. In our lives, though, even if we do travel to some secluded place, it will likely only be for a short time while on a spiritual retreat. The question is, how can such spiritual practices help us in our day-to-day lives? How do we take that mountaintop experience and translate it into our daily lives? Or even more important question I would ask is, how do we make our daily lives into mountaintop experiences? And that journey is why I chose the title of today's sermon, Chop Wood, Carry Water. It comes from an old Zen story. When a great Zen master once asked, what did you do before enlightenment? The master replied, I was chopping wood and carrying water for my master. And what do you do now that you are enlightened? Asked the questioner. The Zen master replied, I chop wood and carry water for myself. And so the questioner queried, so what's the difference? You did this before and you're doing the same thing now. And the Zen master answered, earlier I was doing it unconsciously. Now I am doing it consciously. So there are two parts of this story that really resonate for me. First and foremost is the fact that the work they were doing was both the same and before, after enlightenment. So the message of the story is that a major change in your life is not a prerequisite to attaining enlightenment. Enlightenment or spiritual growth, or whatever other word you would like to use, is not based on what we do, but rather is based on what our attitude is towards whatever it is that we are doing. It is about being mindful in all that we do. Now, the second part of the story that resonates for me is that before enlightenment, they did their task because they were told to do their task by someone else. But after enlightenment, they did what they did because it was their conscious choice. They took ownership of their choices and their actions. How often in our lives do we see ourselves on a trajectory? We may call it destiny or fate. We may see our lives as the causal results of circumstances out of our control. But ultimately, it is about having the mental discipline to consciously choose our own destiny and to consciously choose how we will act and react to the circumstances and to others. So we have to be careful not to fall into the trap of just acceptance of our circumstances and just say everything is a fait accompli and just go on, but rather we should bring that mental discipline to all that we do. We can look at chopping wood as a chore and rush through it, just going through the motions, see it as tedium, and feel free to substitute tasks such as cooking, washing dishes, or doing clothes for chopping wood. Or we can put our full attention to chopping the wood or any task that we have, to bring our awareness to it, to bring our best selves to it, to bring our best skill to it, to see our purpose in every swing of that axe. And we can bring this attitude to every action that we do, in every interaction that we have. And if we follow this technique, each action we do may take a little longer, but by being mindful about all that we do, we get to appreciate each moment that we have. And if we rush one thing without awareness, without attention, that is a type of habit that we will build up in our lives in how we live our life. We will develop the habit of rushing through all of our actions and interactions and relationships. We need to engage in spiritual practices, whatever they may be for us, to help us become more mindful in our engagement with the world. One of those spiritual practices that I encourage us all every week to practice is a spiritual practice of generosity as we take our offering. This Sunday, 100% of the offering goes to Transition House. So every dollar you give will go to Transition House, a Unitarian Universalist church project dedicated to helping one family at a time transition out of homelessness. In partnership with Sarasota Housing Authority, who owns and maintains the Newtown Transition House and supports a working family in need of safe and affordable housing. We furnish the home for the family, provide a rent subsidy, and help with occasional expenses. So please be as generous as you can as the basket passes around, or even on YouTube, there is a link, or on your phone here, you can go to YouTube, there's a link, and you can donate that way. Let this sacred time begin. Our next reading is an excerpt from Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. We are very good at preparing to live, but not very good at living. We know how to sacrifice 10 years for a diploma, and we are willing to work very hard to get a job, a car, a house, and so on. But we have difficulty remembering that we are alive in the present moment. The only moment there is for us to be alive. Peace is every step. The shining red sun is my heart. Each flower smiles with me. How green, how fresh all that grows. How cool the wind blows. Peace is every step. It turns the endless path to joy. And now once more, we are gifted with the music. of Fred Sarasky.
The cobra is back in the basket.
Now, I know when I do things meaningful, like writing a sermon, time flies, time stands still. And I observe when people do this, right? Time passes very, very quickly. And when we are immersed in a task, we feel that way. And I look at that sort of as the elasticity of time, right? Instead of almost thinking about it in the terms of eternity, right? When time does not seem to exist, right? So instead of thinking of eternity as some time in the future, we should really think of each moment that we have as eternity. As Unitarian Henry David Thoreau said, you must live in the present, launch yourself on every wave, find your eternity in each moment. And we should always try to bring our attention back to the present moment and the present consciousness as a way to slow things down when everything else around us in the world is going fast and out of control. So how do we accomplish this mindful engagement? Mindfulness is not something that people can just turn on and off like a switch. And this is why we call it a spiritual practice. It's something we have to practice really day in and day out. It may seem awkward at times when you start, and some instances will be easier than others. But with a repetition of such practices, mindfulness over time, the effects are cumulative and will change your life and how you live your life. Now, my first experience with spiritual practice was meditation. I've had a meditation practice now for 35 years, some solitary, often with a sangha or a group. And we have a number of them within this congregation. When I was in my 20s, after I was having some stomach problems, my doctor, who I was very lucky I had, is back in the days when we had family doctors who would spend a half hour with you, talking to you and getting to know you. And he said, Jay, just take a couple of days off, go to the beach, and learn how to meditate. Because I guess back in the day, I was very anxious about things. Not so much anymore, but 35 years of meditation helped with that. But as is my nature, so I went out. I did take a day off, one only, went to the beach. But then I went out and I bought a book called How to Meditate. I didn't know how to meditate, and he didn't really give me any direction, so I went out and bought a book. And by the way, that book is still in print, as a matter of fact. And without question, meditation has changed my life for the better. I find meditation helps me focus and remain calm, to see the world as it really is, right? And so, for instance, like if I'm meditating and a car horn honks, all of a sudden I could either go, oh my gosh, that just broke my meditation. Why do people have to honk? And I go on a litany. My brain starts just making up stories about why this car honked. But with mindfulness, I could just say, oh, that's a car horn honking, and then go back to meditate. Right? Often our minds just sort of make up stories within ourselves, imagining things, good and or bad, but not always about what something actually is. So I just found that spiritual practices like meditation lead to a more contemplative way of thinking and to a more engaged way of living. Just breathing and focusing on the breath allows me to open myself up to the greater possibilities of the universe. And I admit, even when that storm is going, when the wind is howling, all I have to do now is just stop for 1 second, and I just take in 3 little short breaths in and out, and that taps into that feeling I have of 35 years of meditating, most of the time. So, but also by going inward, I was enabled to go outward. Meditation helps me connect my conscious mind with my unconscious mind, and by connecting with my inner self. And then I become more comfortable with myself. And when I am more comfortable with myself, I no longer need to be defensive with others. It allowed me to listen to others with an open and curious heart and mind. Now, my second experience with spiritual practices, really most surprisingly to me, was in walking a labyrinth. So it has become an extremely meaningful practice to me. And it's deepened my spiritual and ethical life. Now, friends of mine, my home church of Orlando, they created a full-size labyrinth there. I had no idea what a labyrinth was before then. And, just really out of respect for my friends doing all this work, I decided to walk it. I really didn't expect to gain anything from the experience. Yet, in every step I took, I found a metaphor for life. Do we take shortcuts? Do we finish what we start? As I got halfway through, it was like, oh, do I have to walk all the way through this, right? How do we avoid obstacles, right? Where are we heading? It's not clear where we're heading when we're walking in a labyrinth, and often in life as well. Life has twists and turns, and we need to continue to see where it leads us. And for some unexplainable reason, the labyrinth had and continues to have a powerful impact on me. Now, of course, one doesn't need a labyrinth, right? It just takes intentionally spending time on the path towards mindfulness. And there's no one right way or wrong way or left way to do a practice, right? We each have to find our own way. And I encourage you to try different practices to see what works for you. Although I've mentioned a couple of personal solitary spiritual practices do not have to be solitary. Spiritual practices can be in many forms, right? I would consider activities such as coming to worship every Sunday, a spiritual practice. Chalice groups, choir, right? To be communal spiritual practices if you treat them as such. There are physical spiritual practices such as yoga, Tai Chi, jogging, or running as examples. Again, if you treat it as a spiritual practice. We can experience spiritual practices around creativity, such as gardening, cooking, artwork. Every night, one of my spiritual practices, speaking of artwork, I just look at artwork every night for 10 minutes, and then usually I'll post one of them on my Facebook. I just did this as, some Facebook thing, post one picture a night. That was 5 years ago. And ever since then, it just puts me in the right frame of mind with a sense of beauty and creativity, just trying to experience that. But in order for, they can be other spiritual practices such as, well, I said that. So in order for any of these practices to have an impact, we have to do them consistently, with intention, and with mindfulness. And the more we practice mindfulness, the more mindfulness becomes part of our everyday life in all our actions, including chopping wood and carrying water. Intentional living will change how we see ourselves. It will change how we see the world. The Buddha was once asked by a group of seekers of enlightenment, "Who are you?" And he answered them, "I am awake." Now, it is ironic that some in our country use the concept of being awake as a pejorative statement. But I ask you to be awake in every moment of your life, to be awake to all that is going on around you, to be awake to the suffering that is in the world, to be awake to all the wonders that are in the world, to be awake to the wonder that is the world. Be awake to the uniqueness and wonder of what and who you are, and the potential of who you still may be. And so to do so, I encourage you to keep your inner lights burning long and burning strong. So be mindful, and may it be so. I invite you now to rise in body and/or spirit for our closing hymn, number 100, verses 1, 2, 3, and 6. I've got peace like a river.
Soul.
yourselves a round of applause. Our closing words are from Henry David Thoreau. As a single footstep will not make a path on the earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. And to make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. The words will be up on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for your presence here this morning. Thank you.